Pia Raymond Hargrove. Pia is an activist, community cultivator, speaker, author, and educator. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Pia is a founder of Creating Legacies and shares her experience as a professor for the Silver Social Work School at New York University, with a particular emphasis on the needs of immigrant communities and those reflective of the African diaspora. Pia, welcome to our conference.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy, for such an energizing and invigorating talk and speech. It's very inspiring. And to the incredible team, it is so clear the work that you do, and it is small team, but incredible. So Angelique and Kelly and Nell in particular really showed out these couple of months, because I know that it's been quite a journey. So thank you to the entire team. So good morning, bonjour à la calle. Assalamu alaikum, namaste, shalom, y bienvenidos a todos. I am Pia Hargrove, a political activist, speaker, educator, and licensed social worker. I have the honor of being an adjunct assistant professor at NYU Silver School of Social Work. So I just want to definitely give honor to Dean Lindsay and Dean LaSalle Bryant, where I teach and advise students both in the master's and the bachelor's level. I'm the CEO and founder of Creating Legacies, an organization inspiring creative workshops for families and particularly nurturing entrepreneurs. So I'm totally inspired by being mother to two amazing human beings, my son Sage, who is 12 years old, and my daughter Maple, who is 9. And they send their regards to you all. And I'm coming to you straight from Brooklyn, where I'm born and raised. So I saw a bunch of people in the chat also from Brooklyn. So shout out to you all. And I give homage to the land of the Lenape people and honor to my African ancestors whose bodies labored the land and the institutions that we frequent today. And most of all, I thank God and Spirit for the ancestral guidance of those who have left this planet generations ago, and the ancestral angels represented among the many people throughout the life cycle, especially in this time of collective crisis that we have lost, have transitioned, and babies who never had the painful privilege to grow old. In this time of compounded trauma and collective crisis, we are bombarded with the experience of war globally and across our urban landscape, where a day in school, a trip to the playground, or an afternoon self-care stroll can result in being shot by a so-called stray bullet, as if landing the bullet on its intended target is somehow more just. My experience as a Brooklyn girl lifing in this body with this face, and for my folks that maybe don't see at the moment, I'm a 6-foot-tall, walnut-complected sister with freckles and salt and pepper locks that I've stepped into the gray glory, wearing a white blouse with hot pink flowers, welcoming June, so excited for summer. And I have on my vintage rhinestone earrings in memory of my mother, who transitioned 20 years ago this past month. And one of the things, just in thinking how we encourage community and the clients and the people that we serve in this time where many of us have experienced loss, when I think about the 20 years, and I just spoke to a group of children in a group home whose mothers are not present for various reasons, and whether by death, abandonment, physical presence, or spiritual presence not being there, what I've learned is that you can love, and you can also be loved by many others. But the important piece is to really get in touch with the love for ourselves. So I trust that in our profession as social workers, which is more as a lifestyle, not only are we showing that love, but we are inspiring it and cultivating it in the people that we're serving. I always tell my students, they're not just clients, they're people. So as a woman identifying social work of African descent, I bring my full self to social work practice and encourage our intentionality and accountability in community about our self-reflection along the way. As with this critical point in our New York City history, increased population and efforts to centralize city dwellers closest to subways, parks, and cultural institutions, the Flatbush community where I'm from in Brooklyn experienced the construction of large apartment buildings during the 1910s and 20s. And that mirrors many, many, many communities across the 5 boroughs. So intended to be less ostentatious to the Victorian-style homes that were expensive to purchase, much like they continue to be, and maintained and homesteaded only by a select few of Brooklyn's early inhabitants of European descent, these apartment buildings were concentrated on borough blocks designed with shared courtyard to theoretically encourage community. Now, we know over the generations, sometimes these courtyards have presented danger spaces for us, and we continue to live and thrive and move through areas that bring us joy, but also, unfortunately, reflect some of the pains that we experience in our very homes or in our very blocks. In the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution, the construction of New York City subways, the rise of European immigration, and the great migration of people of African descent, fleeing domestic terrorism in southern states, these stately apartment complex buildings became homes to generations, like many of us, of urban indigenous New Yorkers. Over this century, since the construction of many like apartment quadrants, many of us have lived in varying conditions in these eminent brick buildings. What they look like on the outside is not always what they look like on the inside. And sometimes our work as social workers is doing that advocacy in tenant cultivation and outreaching to attorneys and elected officials to support the people that we're serving, the person and the environment that may present with stress, that may present with health disparate issues, that really are a product of the environment that they're living in, which as social workers often may include our own lived experience in this parallel journey. So communities formed are not without the pain and challenges that disparate education, inaccessibility to dignified healthcare, the infiltration of crack, and now we have an entire crisis of substances, both prescription substances and others, lack of viable career opportunities, and anti-melanation immigration policy that presents itself intergenerationally. In my social work practice, always with an activist heart, I was invited by folks in one of the building complexes to share about community resources to a host of residents. Additionally, tenants wanted the support and advocacy to strengthen the organizing efforts to hold their landlord accountable to significant quality of life issues that they were experiencing in the building and the injustices that were persistent in their rental agreements. After literally meeting people where they were, going to the building, meeting people in apartments, meeting people in the room downstairs, which was really a boiler, in between the boiler room and the laundry room, building rapport and showing that care and literally walking the walk down city blocks, down basement stairs, the tenants expressed larger community-based issues and concerns about the prevalence of gun violence on the immediate blocks and the apathy expressed among the youth and adolescents within the building complex. So we often say gun violence, but the unfortunate part is the gun is an object. It is the people and engaging with the environment that create the violence. So there was deep concern that the youngest children may be most impacted by the violence in the building and most influenced by teenagers who are not attending school and at times creating a hostile environment in their immediate families and the building community. It was clear that working with the folks of the residential community needed to be rooted in love and center the residents' voices and experience to brainstorm what and how the layers of concern were to be addressed. The approach to care was multifaceted. We arrived at monthly meetings where we used them as a platform to bring information regarding people's rights and responsibilities. So that included anything from legal assistance to how to access free healthcare, to how to utilize our public hospitals, especially when people did not have immigration status, helping parents coordinate children in schools, advocating at times if a child needed assistance in navigating with the school-based support team. And we were able to coordinate with community stakeholders and elected officials to bring information and tools for navigating, especially legal assistance and city agencies. So I urge us, and some of us are in organizations that represent that work, but creating these bridges so that people can have the services and really doing the hand-holding that sometimes is necessary. While we honor, of course, client self-determination, we have to recognize and acknowledge that with disparate education and lack of English spoken language skills at times, or the way in which people are discriminated against in society, it is not always as simple as we think to hand off a Post-it to make a phone call than sitting with the client and really bridging that connection, or if it's allowed in your spaces, to go with people to the places that they need to access the care. So secondly, with my organization, Creating Legacies, we conducted a half-day psychoeducational group for the teens and the young adults ages 14 to 24. And we extended it to that age because those of you in schools know that often it's our children who are overage, so-called overage and undercredited in our schools, also mirror the population that unfortunately is being arrested and incarcerated during those critical and vulnerable years. So that winter break in February was a time that people were very concerned that the children had off from school for a week. Parents had to work. They already were not necessarily engaged in school. What would happen with them? So we coordinated this event in the basement of the building complex, the same sort of small room between the laundry room and the boiler room. So it does not have to be fancy. With love is present and care is present, growth is always possible. So in the Creating Legacies experience, we engaged around personal growth and development, taught financial literacy, where we coordinated with a local, what had been founded as a Black-owned bank, Carver Federal Savings Bank, a science teacher, and we had mental health and wellness workshops, among other topics, throughout this half-day experience that culminated in a pizza lunch for the youth. So that way we knew that they were fed, their parents knew they were fed, and they were still in their home environment. So using a culturally adaptive lens with an emphasis on African-American history, being it was during the month of February. And our third pronged approach to engaging with this community in the residential building, we collaborated with Creating Legacies to invigorate a public park that was not often frequented by caregivers and children because of the historical violence in the area. The warm breeze blows, causing cascades of sugar maple seeds, their verdant wings twirling in the autumn breeze. For the first time in a long time, the ebony gates are open, inviting passerbys with the forest green sign carved with golden letters to read, and those golden letters say, Uma Park. The name itself, rich in its Arabic meaning, people, community, inspires neighbors to unify beyond intersectional identities, but on the social work core value of the importance of human relationships. The sugar-sweet aroma of cotton candy wafts through the air as pink and blue sugar-spun threads float like hevel, camouflaged in blue skies. The vibratory pulse of the djembe summons the ancestors to protect the gathering of families from across the neighborhood without policing, honoring the sanctuary of joy and vivo. The strumming of guitar strings rich with compa rhythm harmonizes the jump of children's feet as they duel with elongated balloon swords in hand. The fringed costumes of metallic tinsel, prismatic in the noonday sun, highlight the height and splendor of wooden legs stepping high above the crowd. Trinidadian and Tobagonian folklore whispers that stilt walkers, moko jumbies, are protectors of the people as they represent the spirits that walked across the Atlantic Ocean with enslaved Africans to watch over and protect them and us in the New World. Here at Uma, the young Moko Jumbi step confidently to protect the little children and create an archway for the little legacies to dance through in celebration of their joy. Faces are painted with the symmetrical splendor of butterfly wings, with jeweled bindi adorned on their visionary visage. the screeches of excitement reverberating with the melodic laughter of children and intergenerational family presence. The slow sip of syrupy strawberry scrape ices, draped with the Caribbean cream of sweetened condensed milk, cools the palates of children dancing to the live music and instruction of the visiting dance theater. A sensory joy journey of community, people. A social work journey curated with love and covered in joy. The power of love and joy that yet persists in collective crisis. This multifaceted approach to deep engagement demonstrates our profession's core values with commitment to service, social justice, dignity and worth of the person, and the importance of human relationships from a heartfelt place of integrity and competence. As we take this time to reflect on and examine who we are and what we bring to practice, we are called to meet each client where they are. But arguably, they meet us at the same intersection and junction. The most beautiful thing about New York City is that we are common dwellers. From the person experiencing homelessness to the billionaire, we take the same subway, walk the same streets, and call the same blocks our own, and we rep for those blocks. And at the same time, that beauty can bond us or break us, or simply separate us by the boardroom table. We as social workers can truly meet people where they are, engage in an empowering way, and still make sure that everyone has a seat at the table. Or as Brooklyn-born Bayesian sister Shirley Chisholm said, and where there's no seat at the table, bring a folding chair. We must all take a moment to examine what is our why. When I think about why I arrived at this powerful profession called social work, it is clear to me that it is less of a profession and more of a lifestyle, a passion for and commitment to change through growth. In the urban star called Brooklyn, at the luminescent points of Flatbush and Crown Heights, I was raised. So shout out to all our Flatbush Crown Heights folks. I'm a fifth generation Brooklyn girl on my mom's side and a descendant of Carolina native Cherokee and liberated Africans on my dad's side. I was taught that education was freedom and that prayer would guide the rest. Our family opened an awards business at the corner of Nostrand Avenue and Park Place that I eventually owned, carrying legacy awards for almost 50 years. With the street soundtrack of Big Daddy Kane's Ain't No Half Steppin' and Eric B. and Rakim's No Tricks in 86, It's Time to Build, we were a driving force in economic development, truly building a burgeoning Black community. And then we experienced. Believe it or not, I was barely tall enough, and I'm 6 feet now, to reach the counter's edge in our awards and sporting goods store and needed a milk crate. Shout out to people that remember Sunnydale milk crates, to be tall enough to meet people where they were. My favorite time was after school when the Madison High School cheerleaders, drop a note in the chat if you went to Madison, would shop for pom-poms and saddle shoes. I admired their voices, their amplified voices. You didn't need to tell them to speak up, and their raw beauty. What we know of children is that they are acutely aware of their surroundings and experiences. Children often present as our, quote, identified patient, or IP, simply because they often manifest the symptoms of the septic state of their surroundings. The star of this cheerleading squad was no different. I watched her beauty wane as her chocolate skin grew ashen and her ebony tresses thinned. Her rose-colored lips became blistered and chalky. Her eyes bulged, her cheeks sunk, and her body weakened while her attitude and behavior became erratic. No one knew what was happening to her, But from my Sunnydale milk crate, I knew, because red plastic vials littered my elementary school yard every morning when we returned for the recess before school. I knew because drug dealers lined our school block after school, enticing us with shiny cars and snakes. Well, that cheerleader was the IP, just a manifestation symptomatic of the pain that would pursue and subsequently ravish our community. The crack epidemic claimed lives and claimed souls, not unlike what is happening now with our overdoses, with our suicidality, that we keep quiet, but we're suffering from it. From freebasing fires to mass murders, suicide, sexual assault, kidnappings, and abandonment, our communities suffered, they struggled, and they were ignored. Simultaneously, HIV/AIDS attacked our bodies and ignorance divided families. Our children were trying to grow in a minefield of debris. But where there is any drop of moisture and any ray of sun, growth is always possible. And the growth that comes from challenge is resilient. Now, I recognize in some parts of the world, the sun does not always shine every day. But as bleak as things can get in New York City and in New York State, as far as I've seen, even when it was covered with smoke, the sun still comes up every day. So we need to really be intentional about looking for those rays of sun in our children. I was blessed to live in an amazingly nurturing, in my immediate home environment, in a historic enclave in Brooklyn. However, I was clear that it's not about where you as the individual live or what's going on in your home only. I was clear that we're purposed to grow collectively, and I have a responsibility to inspire vitality anywhere I go. I didn't know the name for this was social worker, but I was clear that this is who I was and who I will forever be. The awareness of self, of my experience in this specific zeitgeist, indelibly shapes who I am and who I am in the context of social work practice. Careful to be free of judgment, knowing that any of us can wind up in any circumstance, especially in New York City. We all represent the billionaire on the train and the person experiencing homelessness, sometimes all within one lifetime. From substance use to sobriety, mental health and suicidality, responsible parties for violence and victims of oppression, we each uniquely juxtapose the spectrum of experience. What's part of our humanity is that we're capable of all of it. And sometimes we have experienced all of it, even if others don't know. What is important is what we do with it. Examine our implicit bias in our experience. How do we judge, and what have we been judged for? And keep in mind, as we build our Roots crew, having folks that hold us accountable, because we don't always recognize our bias. But when we trust someone and they give us, feedback with love, then we can examine that bias. We can think about where are we judgmental and be empathic to think about where we have been judged. How do we identify? And then what identities are assigned to us? We don't have to subscribe to those things. Evolution in our identity is what we can move toward. We're not always the same at every moment. And the more that we expand the reach and scope of who we are engaged with, the more expansive our identities become in true humanity. Like LL Cool J said, I can't live without my radio. And as a Brooklyn girl and Big Daddy Kane head, I responded to his refrain. Hey, yo, it's 88, Thomas said it straight. Our community was warned by KRS-One in the Stop the Violence galvanization. You're headed for self-destruction. We were being scapegoated. We took control of our experience, led by our youth and young adults. So we can always remember who invigorates that path for us and continue to pour into our youth and young adults and cultivate and nurture and be in an intergenerational community. I know we're taught in a lot of ways in the United States to move toward individualism. If we're here, most likely we've gone through some level of higher institutions and education, and sometimes that can separate us more from the core of who we are. So let's stay connected to how we're in community across generations. We can only learn about other phases of life if we're in community with folks that can share about their lived experience, that can give testimony of how they overcame, and keeping even our client communities close so that they can share with others that come behind them of the inspiration and how to keep going. As Queen Latifah called for UNITY, I stepped to the mic. Now we are inspiring and empowering families as we are creating legacies. Please join me as we write the next verse in our rhyme book called Community. Yours in service and LOVE love, Pia Hargrove.
Wow, that was incredible, phenomenal. Can we all just give Pia a round of applause and so anything that Pia said that stood out to you, if you can just put it in the chat box. I hear this is so inspiring this morning. Thank you. Bravo, speechless. Yes, absolutely incredible. Wonderful speech, professor. Wonderful hand claps. Excellent, amazing, and inspiring. Loved every word. Empowering. So inspiring, beautiful. Pia, I think I've been a part of your workshops, but I've never heard you as a keynote speaker. And I can tell you that you are an incredible, not just speaker, but you have a way of storytelling that brings us all there. I think all of us felt like we were there, like we were right there with you. And you dropped some bars, some lyrics, and some sound bites of wisdom. And I just have a few that I wanted to highlight. I saw some in the chat box, but there were just a few that you said, Pia, and it was, you said, our work is rooted in love. You talked about the work that you did with the residents was centered in their voice. You talked about the approach was multifaceted, the care that you provided. You talked about coordinating with community stakeholders. You talked about creating bridges. You talked about love and care. And without this work, love is vital, right? We can't do it without love. You said when love and care is present, growth is always possible. You said that if there is no seat at the table, like Shirley Chisholm said, we have to bring our own chair. And then you talked about possibilities. So I just want to say again, thank you, Pia. That was so incredible. I don't know if you have any closing words.
Thank you. And I got to shout out Oasis Love because I see Flatbush and Cortelia is exactly in the dynamics of the story that I'm telling. So I'm sure you probably know Uma Park, which is a small sort of park with a small play structure that really parents didn't feel comfortable to frequent because there's a lot of gun violence in the community. But again, to kind of name it, guns are an issue. And then the apathy and the disconnect of our young people to be inspired to this level of violence is the deeper issue. And that's the part that's hard to talk about because these are literally our children, like our actual children that we live with and sometimes have fear of. So I just want to name that because this is the space that we need to be honest with what we're experiencing. Because what's beautiful is us as social workers, we are on this parallel journey. As much as we're working with clients, I know we're all advocating for higher salaries and we're doing amazing work in the process, but because that is
good.
We're continuing to live with the same struggles of the clients that we continue to serve. We may find ourselves without food on the same day we're assisting clients with food insecurity. Yeah. So it's important for us to really be honest about this dialogue. I did have a question. Well, I wanted to since we do have a little bit of time, I wanted to hear if folks had questions, but then I also wanted to pose a question to you all as a group. But I did want to leave space for questions. There was a lot shared in that.
I'm not sure, Angie team, if you saw any questions. So far, I can tell you something. More than questions, there were congratulations. Linda says, so much power to make a difference to our own communities and a step at a time. Sometimes when we start with engaging the children, you can eventually bring the parents along. Thank you. Wonderful speech. God blessing. Vilma said, services in the rent that you pay for the room on this earth. Great. Vilma said, thank you for addressing gun violence. And Sandra said, I shot in the arm this morning. Thank you. And Deb said, most important message is sometimes we have to engage with clients in a more intense way, even going with clients' appointments. If I have a nickel for every time someone questions how important this kind of engagement will be, that I will be rich. Sandra said, thank you, heartfelt reminder of who we are and what we do. Keyword is empathy. Norma said the importance of cultural language and respect individuality. That's great. Dr. Shakara said motivational and inspirational. People are loving this. Professor Pia, this is fantastic. And now we open the floor for in the chat. Please put any questions that we have. We have this incredible moment to connect. And we thank you both, Shaniqua, Dr. Shaniqua and Dr. Pia, for opening this space for everyone else to engage with you. So anyone please on the chat, any questions? And then for the rest of the team, did anyone see any question that I missed? And if not, chime in. I can't see you, but I could hear you.
No questions. However, I do want to give it back to Professor Pia because I know you said you wanted to present the question to everyone. Maybe that will help.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm asking you now to take a couple minutes and just reflect to yourself. If you have paper, or I don't know, paper's obsolete to folks. I actually asked my students the other day, do you all know how to write with the pen? Because I honestly wasn't sure. Or type out your response. What is your why? So how have you arrived at this point in your journey? What people, places, experiences have impacted your path? Because we do so much in community and sometimes we get a little disconnected from our actual why. And that is the thing, then we get a little burnt out or tired or overwhelmed that can keep us going. So just take a moment to reflect and just jot down, bullet point, what is your why?
Let's see, and we also put that question on the chat. So please, everyone, go to the chat and drop your answers here. What is your why?
Yeah, I also see if you want to come off mute and say your why, you can just raise your hand or just go ahead and go off mute. Is that okay, Professor Pia?
That's fine with me.
Hi, I'll start as my colleagues are putting their thoughts together. Thank you so much, Professor Pia. I mean, I'm here. I'm getting emotional because your words just touched me so much. I'll think for me, the why, the beauty of your conversation with me, you brought me back to growing up as a kid in the South Bronx. I'm still in the South Bronx, but growing up, a lot of what you shared really resonated for me. I think what brought me into the social work, you know, the impact of violence then that wasn't talked about. When I remember communities burnt out and people wouldn't talk about that. Like I would pass buildings, you know, and I'm like, why is it that that building isn't being fixed as a child, asking my parents, you know, that, why is that? You know, why can't we build a park? When you spoke about a park, the challenges of finding a park, you know, so like I said, I'm getting emotional because that resonated for me. And I think that's what brought me here. And it saddens me when I speak with families and there is no park, there is no library, there's no place for entertainment. I mean, the beauty when you talked about the music and like, that's what we need. That's what we need. And so I'm going to be quiet now, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to share, because this is also, you know, somewhat instructional, that of the series of events, we've done this at different city parks, is utilizing community members. There's a dance group where there's a young man that was leading a small group of kids and wanted to expose his dance troupe. So he came and did an engagement workshop at the park. I did raise funds the Parks Department, you can become a friends of and get funds. And I was able to get like a cotton candy machine, snow cone maker, balloon person to make balloons, face painter, you know, and hired those people for the park, the same way you do for a birthday party type event, but in the park. And then there was a group that had a band and they volunteered to play their music in the park. They brought a guitar, djembe drums, a Haitian band called Alegba and Friends. So it's a way that you engage community. And once people are involved, they feel good and then they're safe. And then the Moko Jumbies is also a group from the community. It's Trinidadian, that it's a young man and he teaches young people from little children to walk on stilts, because then you don't have the fear. So they're growing up walking on taller and taller stilts. So once you invigorate a park and people came and saw teenagers and children on stilts, like literally, I don't know, maybe 8 feet up in the air, no one's thinking about violence. Everyone was like, what is going on? So you just, when you show that care and you enliven the space, that joy becomes present. And I wasn't concerned about physical safety. I mean, there were enough people that were caring for the environment that it wasn't an issue. And as far as garbage and all that, I went to the sanitation house a week before, and then I asked, could you make sure that the garbage is picked up in this park? And they came back through and actually did an additional pickup of garbage. Like they sent a truck through at an additional time. So I had to do the walk. I literally walked to the sanitation house. Doesn't hurt to take some coffee and donuts when you go, you know? And you have to build the connections for the community. It's not going to just happen. We have to do it.
Yeah. Professor Pia, I just wanted to say, one of the things that I noticed in the example you used in terms of gathering the community together is that you help the community to walk the walk too. So you're walking the walk, inspire them to come and walk the walk together. So you were able to gather the local talent, the voices of those that live there to revitalize and reimagine that space. I thought that was really powerful.
Absolutely.
Hi, good morning, Professor Pia. Hi, Norma. Thank you. So I'm heading into 40 years in child welfare, working in foster care and adoption. There were many aspects of your presentation that touched my heart, but more importantly, being of Haitian descent, I was born in Haiti, raised in Crown Heights, and live actually still in Brooklyn. It was really inspiring for me to see how you cultivated the Mecca of Brooklyn in terms of all the various cultures that exist and bringing value to a people. In your presentation today, I started working with unaccompanied refugee minors from Haiti, using my Haitian Creole to translate, and to know, fast forward 40 years later, we still have an immigrant crisis going on multi-levels, not just folks from all over. And I think you spoke about that in your presentation. I forget the word that you utilized to talk about that impact of that trauma. It's just like inspiring that you're bringing us full circle. No matter how many years we're in the field, it's just so important in terms of the relevance of how we show up as social workers. Thank you for this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I said anti-melanation.
That's right.
What it is immigration policy.
That's right.
Yes, thank you for bringing awareness to the group that immigration policy specifically against Haitian people is very different than immigration policy for people from across other countries in the Caribbean. And it continues to incite a bias and discrimination within our community of color, within our specifically African diasporic community of color. So we have to be mindful and aware and bring awareness to the people we're serving when they're not understanding why things are happening, that we are given a designed message through legislation that then shows up in how people are treated in community. So that's why it was very important to me at this part, because that particular circle is not necessarily as many Haitian residents to have Haitian influence and culture intertwined into the event. So I tried to really be intentional about gathering folks across cultures to be present together, because we know whether we're in the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, we might say it's a melting pot, but a lot of times buildings or almost whole floors within buildings still represent one ethnic group. And even in that, we get class differentials between the ethnic groups. So I'm calling that out so that we're aware of it. And so as we're working with people, we carry the role in helping to diffuse that and also bring in awareness to where it comes from so that we don't keep subscribing. When I said what identities are assigned to us, that's not us. These are messages we're getting through the news, through immigration policy and the like. Other folks want to share your why?
Recipe, there's also lots of whys in a chat box.
Oh, okay.
Here, so I see Beverly stating walking through basement stairs brings back memories. As a visiting nurse, social worker, Professor Pia, you spoke from the heart and you truly walk the walk. Continue with your genuineness as a true social worker. Mark says, what has impacted on me was changing the culture and direction of my community board. Vinay says, came to this profession to work myself out of a job as it pertains to serving, supporting people of color and faith, healing and growing. And there's so many more, but I know you also want to give opportunity for those that may want to unmute themselves to come off and share their why as well.
My eye went to Carrie Ann's about growing up in Jamaica, there wasn't a place to gather. So my family, along with other members of the community, came together and built a community center. I remember this as a young child as I was part of the Bucket Brigade, helping, which made an impact on my journey towards social work. So thank you for sharing that. And I just want to emphasize that, not to say that we don't need funding and, the larger structures, but I feel like a lot of times in community, we do feel like we need a community center, we don't have it. But what these experiences, and these are just two sort of many, showed me also is wherever you have a space to gather, you can make a lot happen, especially when people are connected and they know that you're just guiding the support. You're just there. You are just a facilitator. They're bringing the workout. They brought the dances. They brought the music. And then another group brought donuts and people just brought what they could. We didn't have a space. Public parks, your libraries, every library, you can reserve a room. There's no cost. You literally just sign a little piece of paper, say what time you need the room, and you can use a library as long as you don't charge anything. You can use public spaces to gather. And unfortunately, we know a lot of times violence happens because people are gathered in public spaces. So it's for us to decide that love is going to happen, cultivation is going to happen, community is going to happen. But it's just taking that step and walking the walk and doing that with our client communities.
Professor Pierre, can I ask what your experience has been from a legislative component? As you say, when I think of communities, I think of the assembly people, the council members that are part of there. Have they been very forthcoming when you've done this in the communities? I mean, sometimes I've heard people have had mixed experiences. Sometimes it's really great, and other people kind of struggle. Just wanted to know your thoughts.
No, I find political activism goes hand in hand, because let's say if you want the support of an elected official and you're already organizing some sort of community gathering, and you say, okay, I already have a host of people that represent my agency or the building I'm serving or the residential treatment center that I'm serving that are going to be gathered. I would love for you to come and share some words with them. Most of the time, they'll be very happy to come. And if they can't, then send a representative from their office. I mean, these are public figures, so they have an obligation to do so. So if they can't come as the individual, they will send someone from their office to represent. That's just in sort of physical presence. Now, if you need support, I recommend through the city council, there's a discretionary funds that comes out every year, where if you're a nonprofit organization, you can apply for funds from the discretionary funds from the city council. So that is a way to actually get money and resources specifically for if it's a program you've designed or an overall organization. And then in a sort of intermediate, I always recommend, so write this down, Citizens Committee for New York City, which is an excellent organization where you can get neighborhood improvement grants, block beautification grants for maybe $2,000 to $3,000. But we know we can do a lot with that when we do a lot with zero. And to take the sort of anxiety off, the applications are relatively simple. They really want to see the community members have an idea and that you are coordinating with other people to come together to bring that idea to fruition. So don't worry about your writing skills. Don't worry and say, I haven't written a paper since 19, whatever. That's not what they're looking for. They really want to see the authenticity. So I recommend that. Or if you're leading groups in your organization, especially young people, you can get them together to, design the program and do that grant application.
Yeah, I just have two comments. Number one, about Citizens Committee. I've actually gotten 2 grants through Citizens Committee, and I'm waiting to hear about a third one. And yes, they're extremely useful. With one of the grants, we actually did a beautification project in my neighborhood, and we still continue to go back there. The other comment I wanted to make is, I don't know if people are familiar with the mayor's initiative called Breaking Bread Building Bonds.
Yes.
So I've actually organized 2 of them in our we organized was about 10 days after the war broke out in the Middle East. And of course, tremendously upset. But what was wonderful is we brought 35 people together, diverse people coming from different places, and we focused on getting to know each other. And I can tell you, we walked out of that room feeling positive. Given what had just happened 10 days before, it was really, for me, it was a very uplifting experience. And we're still, even though there's no more funding, we're trying to seek funding, and we're actually planning another Breaking Bread Building Bonds. So again, unfortunately, that initiative, which I think was extremely powerful, was that's something we could advocate for, because it gives groups like mine, small community-based organizations, ways to come together and bring diverse people together for discussion. And we pretty much did get into any political discussions. It was more focused on getting to know each other. And we kind of used we didn't use the term safe space. We used the term brave space, because the concept of brave space is you have to be brave to be able to come forward. And I think that's one of the concepts, and I think that helped promote dialogue and discussion among the participants.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark, for yes, Breaking Bread Building Bonds. I've hosted that as well. Now, I want to share, while we have a couple minutes, my next question for you all related to what I shared is our sensory joy journey. I want us to take a moment, and you can jot it down again. What does joy taste like? So in the piece, I said like cotton candy wafting through the air. It sounds like the music. It looks like children laughing and dancing. So I want you to identify, what does joy taste like? What does joy smell like? What does joy sound like? What does joy look like? And what does it feel like? Because when we are in those crisis moments, or just in a stressed out day, this is something we can do for ourselves and also inspire our clients. All of us can access those points, but we forget what they are when we're in the midst of something. So just jot that down. Your 5 senses of joy, your sensory joy journey.
This is incredible, Professor Pia, and I know we're going into breakout sessions, and we're a little over time, but I love what you have, and if encouraging everyone, if we can put those questions into the chat box, those are great opportunities for reflection, to just think about, what does joy feel like, taste like, look like for you. We heard it in the story, Professor Pia, when you were telling it, we were feeling and tasting it. And we were there with you. And so thinking about, what does joy look like for yourself, we do want you to think about those things, reflect on it. Like Professor Pia said, write it down. We're going to have a 5-minute break. So if you have the opportunity to just think about that, we do encourage you to do so. But I'll give you the last words, and then we'll move on to morning logistics.
So thank you all so much. It's been an honor to be here with you. I hope that this brings, positive energy, but also reflection on some of the hard things, because we got to go there too, and moving into these 2 incredible days of Walk the Walk. Thank you so much, Shaniqua, and for all the work that you do with our youth and our children. I hear so many amazing things from students who have engaged with you. And as a mother, you know, it means so much to me, all of us, in how we're working together to support our communities. I will have a workshop tomorrow, Color Me Well, Mental Health and Racial Trauma, in the morning session. So I hope to possibly see some of you there. And feel free, I would love for you to stay engaged with me. I'm pretty active on Instagram as Professor Pia, and my LinkedIn is also Pia Hargrove as well. So looking forward to engaging with you in the continued spaces here in New York and beyond.
Incredible. Round of applause to Professor